Some pretty awful images have come out. I mean, we could do this literally, I could do 8 clips on this every week, but some more awful images came out of what ISIS is doing in Iraq and in Syria, and this time it involves the gays. Surprise, surprise. So we've got a couple images for you here. Let's take a look. So this is ISIS throwing gay men to death, or at least men that are accused of being gay, in Nineveh, Iraq. So they're literally just publicly executing them by throwing them off the roofs of buildings. And this has happened before. This is just a couple of pictures of it. The third photo that we've got here, this is 2 men were charged with thievery and bound to crucifixes. Victims are commonly crucified sometimes after they've been killed in ISIS public executions. By the way, I should mention that our ally, Saudi Arabia, does stuff similar to this. And what you're looking at right now is ISIS stoning a woman to death for allegedly committing adultery. All right, so we've done a whole bunch on this, and it just sort of never seems to stop. As Jen mentioned in the earlier segment, they've got 2 Japanese hostages right now that they're threatening to behead unless Japan gives them $200 million. Should any of this surprise us at this point? Actually, before I even ask you that, shouldn't the gays be in an uproar right now? Why haven't I heard HRC or GLAAD or, you know, when Russia was doing this, or not even going this far, but
because
when Russia was having
vodka. Because with Russia, it was that they were having vodka that supposedly did not support, you know.
By the way, Stoli vodka, which was made in Latvia.
Right, of course.
But that, you know,
I was on the show when we talked about that, when we were actually like, wait a minute, it's not even made in Russia.
Yeah.
But that's the point. If you can support something like, I'm not going to drink your certain brand of vodka, or I'm going to boycott your Olympics, that's a lot more. It seems like a lot more of a tangible goal than this overwhelming, seemingly endless stream of violence coming from this region.
Yeah.
I mean, to go up against a country that we're going to engage in the Olympics with is very different than engaging with countries that are throwing people off of buildings for being gay. I just think it seems so hard and so difficult, and so you can't even wrap your head around it. Like, is this real life?
Right.
Yeah.
So when ISIS gets in the Olympics, then we'll figure out how to deal with them properly. And what would we boycott if ISIS is? Hummus, they'll end up making their own hummus.
Right.
I mean,
no, but I think that's a good point, that it seems like such an overwhelming, daunting task. There's no way to even, like, in 10 Muslim countries right now, you can be killed just for being gay. Like, that's actually law. Like, they're not breaking any laws right there. So, like, when you're trying to take on institutionally multiple countries, I don't know that the HRC, like, can do anything, right? They can't do anything.
I don't know that they can do anything. It just seems odd to me that you never hear GLAAD saying anything about this, or HRC.
Because what are they going to say? They're going to go, oh, your whole country, not only does it believe in, you know, in very anti-gay policies such as, I don't know, killing people for being gay and stoning women to death, but it's just everything on a whole level. It's how they'll cut off your hand for stealing. So I think that you think, well, I'm not even going to touch that if I'm GLAAD, because where do you even begin? You feel like you're talking to a sect of people that are just barbaric and not reasonable. And what do they give a shit if GLAAD issues a press release?
I know.
Like,
I guess it would be more for us, I think. I don't know. Of course it would be more for us. They're not going to go, oh, shit, you know, the HRC, and we're not going to get a GLAAD award.
GLAAD is more worried about things that they feel like they can actually change. So if there's a policy in the United States or in a country that we are actually actively doing business with, it is worth their time because you can actually enact change and see something happen, where if you're wasting your time in that section of the world where the world leaders of all the major countries can't even figure out what to do, I think GLAAD is like, let's deal with stuff that we can actually deal with.
That, I think it goes back to the point that you brought up, which is like, why aren't there more people coming from that part of the world to sort of be a little bit apologetic for it, right? Like,
well, look at those people watching it. They just threw somebody off a building to a crowd of people that are just watching. There's nobody in the crowd stopping it.
Whereas
there's nobody there saying, don't do this.
You know,
well, because then they'd be thrown off the roof too. So there's an inherent problem there. Like, I think there are probably plenty of people, especially ones that at least have internet access, that want to do something, but they're standing out there in the crowd. And they're going, guys, please don't throw the gay guy off the roof. Well, then next thing you know, you got thrown off the roof too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the power in numbers, the whole crowd could just turn their back and simply not watch. I understand that's not happening.
Right.
But I'm saying the way you have to enact change there on the ground is not, again, through issuing a press release through some organization in the United States who condemns you, because over there it's chill to throw someone off a roof for being gay.
Yeah.
That's a whole mentality shift that's not going to change just through complaining or boycotting. And then, as you were saying, there's no product to boycott. They're not even trying to sell vodka or host some sort of international sporting competition. Like,
right. I don't want to make this too much about GLAAD. I just was throwing that in. Do you think we have some like real like cognitive disconnect between like how we live and what's going on in the rest of the world? Because no matter how many of these stories we do, And no matter how many times you see it, it's seriously hard to believe that this stuff is happening.
Completely. I mean, I think I have a cognitive disconnect like 500 miles inland, right? Like I've never lived anywhere except coast, so it's far be it for me to say that like I can even identify with someone in the Bible Belt, right?
You can't believe people are landlocked.
Let alone this. I can't fathom it.
Yeah.
I think there's a complete cognitive disconnect, a complete lack of empathy. But what's also so fascinating is that with the birth of social media and all this, we're more connected than we've ever been. We have the ability to see stuff that's happening in real time across the world. And that's a very recent development. So like, we will see, I think, people, the Arab Spring was the start of it, people actually rising up against whatever that they thought was wrong. And I think we will start to see this once people are introduced to other cultures, right? Like this is what the tenets of the Peace Corps was created on, right? When Kennedy created the Peace Corps, there were 3 tenets of it. One was, go and help this far off culture. The second was, maybe teach them something about American culture and teach them about you. And the third, and what he always thought was the most important, was bring that story back and try and create empathy here because you experience something that none of your friends and family have. And to him, that was always the most important.
So to that point, I give America a lot of shit, and the whole reason I'm doing this show is I want this country to be better. But I've started to think in the last 2 months or so, as these videos constantly come out, and as we see all the stuff that's going on in Europe and free speech and xenophobia and beheadings and everything that's happening all over the place, that maybe we need to take a little moment to realize that things are actually pretty good here. Not to say we've got racial problems, we got problems with police, we got economic problems, everything. We get it. We talk all about that. But do you think we don't, as Americans, just take a moment to be like, you know what? It's actually pretty good here.
No, we have first world problems, and those are third world problems where your basic human rights are violated and not even considered. Forget violated. They're not. You don't even have any basic human rights, let alone civil rights.
Right, you have to have
let alone these higher level rights. Exactly. They don't really have that. So I understand it's okay to address first world problems. If you're having a trouble with your cable company provider, it's all relevant. So it's not like you're like, oh well, I don't want heat or I don't want access to whatever it is you feel like you have the right to access because there's beheadings in other countries and people getting thrown off stuff. But it does make you go, wow, we do comparatively have it really good over here.
Have you been feeling something similar to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that any opportunity you have to sort of get outside of yourself and realize how fortunate you are, you take that, right? Like whether that's volunteering or whether that's traveling or whether that's, even just like going down to Skid Row, right? And taking a walk around. Anything that makes you realize how fortunate you are is a positive. But in the case of this, I think it's so tough, right? I think that you have to just look on the side of compassion and peace always. And I'm like, the hippie in me is like, come on, let's not bomb anyone and let's not do anything. Let's just travel and experience this and see what happens from that human connection. When you've met someone, you're less likely to go bomb them, right?
When you've met someone, you're less likely to bomb them. There you go.